Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all in this truth from Udru wealth, peace, and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. Unto you I say Shalom. Coming to you back with another lesson through the Spirit, and I'm entitled this one: These people are building in vain. Going into pretty much how the people in the world, from the 2/3 of our own people, of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which are the true Israelites, and then these other heathen nations. But really, these heathen nations, starting with the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, which are the self-proclaimed white people, they were meant to build on this side because ultimately it's their kingdom. But our people, the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, they're the ones that are in a complete wrong spirit, because they don't believe, they don't think that this current society, this current kingdom, this current age is ever going to come to an end. Because ultimately, like it says in 2nd Ezra chapter 9, they're not measuring the times diligently. So they're going to continue to be invested in this world, be invested in the system, put all their blood, sweat, and tears into this economy and life, not knowing that this current world is about to pass away, like it says in 2nd Peter chapter 3. So, there's nothing wrong with getting the daily bread, being able to provide for yourself or your families or your family, pretty much like the scripture says, give me poverty nor riches. But these people in the world, they're so heavily set upon getting a bag, on chasing a wealth, building quote unquote generational wealth, buying up this land so we could build a compound for my great grandchildren, when really this whole system, this whole economy, it's about to collapse. So all this, talks about generational wealth and getting a bag so I can get rich on this side, the Lord's about to put a stop to that. So this is Psalms chapter 127 and verse 1, and it reads, except the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, build a house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, keep the city, the watchman waketh, but in vain. So ultimately, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is not dealing with this kingdom. He's not dealing with really, majority of our people, the Israelites. That's why Jake, even that's in the quote-unquote truth, that know that they're Israelites but aren't doing the will of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, they're trying to build on this side because they want the constellation on this side. They can't wait upon Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to give them the kingdom. So a lot of Israelites that know that they're Israelites, they have taken the bag, they have sold out because they lost patience. They can't wait upon Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to exalt them, to give them that crown. But like the Lord said, there's already mansions prepared for you. The whole world is already set up to be joined, or the whole world is already set up as a ruling ground for the Israelites that's going to be established once the kingdom of heaven gets set up upon the planet Earth. But yet, Jake don't want to wait upon that. Jake wants a 1-bedroom apartment, a Hellcat. They want a career. They want to retire when they're 85. Then you have these Israelite camps that sold out, that ultimately took the bag because they couldn't take the load. They couldn't wait upon Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai to exalt them. So a lot of Jake, that sold out, these celebrities, the Diddy's, the Kanye West, to be able to get that bag, the Floyd Mayweathers, they had to do abominable things. But now we see that all that fiat currency, so-called wealth is drying out. We because ultimately the Lord is about to collapse this place. That's why all these celebrities that were once billionaires, now they're broke. Now they're filing bankruptcy. They owe millions of dollars to the IRS because they were trusting in this world's riches. They were trusting in this current world, but like it's being shown that the Lord isn't dealing with this world. He's not dealing with this society. He never was and he never will, and that's why he's about to destroy America, Babylon the Great, by the way of those intercontinental ballistic missiles. This is Matthew 6 and verse 19, and it reads, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through nor steal." This is Yahweh Shai speaking in the red letter. He's straight up telling you that this current life, there's nothing wrong with, if you get a better opportunity, if you got your own business, but the elect's mindset isn't set up on that, because they know that this current system, that the MOTB system, the RFID microchip, it's about to be implemented. And all these so-called riches, wealth, stock market portfolios, gold and silver, houses and compounds that Jake has built upon his side, Esau Edom, he's about to take that away. He's about to break through and steal it. When he resets this economy, he resets this society by the way of that new world order, by the way of the great reset. So he's going to break through and steal those treasures, but the elect that are storing up those treasures up in heaven, where ultimately Esau Edom can't touch him, that's why he's trying to put an RFID microchip inside the whole world, because he's trying to get to the remnant and the elect's treasures, but he's not going to be able to, because ultimately the Lord is going to keep the elect, the remnant, during the hour of temptation. Verse 20, "But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal." So that's the only place where Esau, even the cerebral-claimed white man, isn't going to be able to touch those riches, those spiritual treasures that are stored up in heaven that Esau Edom cannot touch. And the elect, the remnant, they're going to be able to access that spiritual bank account when all hell breaks loose, when they're calling upon Yahweh Bashim Al Shai to be delivered. But these people in the world, these 2/3 Israelites, these heathens, they're not going to have those same treasures in heaven. No, their treasures, so-called treasures, are going to be here upon the planet Earth, where Esau Edom is going to take him. He's going to crash the stock market portfolio. He's going to crash the housing market. Everything's on every single bubble, every single market is about to burst. But yet you still have Jake trying to invest in this system, not knowing it's about to collapse. And he's about to take everything, that these people build in the world, and they're going to be asking themselves, man, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Because they weren't paying attention. So they're going to get hit off guard. Verse 21, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." And the heart, the mind, the spirit of the elect and the remnant, their mindset is towards the kingdom of heaven, where there's actually going to be true rest. Everything is going to be in righteousness with the law, statute, commandments at the forefront. We're not going to have the heathen nations ruling over us. But Jake wants to be comfortable here. They're okay with being ran by the so-called white man. They're okay with all of our people just threw as hell out here, bugged out of their mind, because they don't have that rulership mentality. That's only a mentality that the remnant and the elect have, because you can't build. That's another thing too that Jake doesn't understand, the 2/3 Jake, that you can't build a kingdom inside of another kingdom. You're inside of Esau Edom's kingdom. How are you going to build another kingdom inside the cerebral-claimed white man's kingdom? You can't, because ultimately we're under the blessing. We're in the blessing that Yahweh Bashim Al Shai gave to Esau Edom. And Jake don't want to wait upon his blessing, which is the kingdom of heaven, immortality, the new bodies, having the heathen nations under subjection. That's why majority of our people, they're just going to have to get put to death. Micah chapter 2 and verse 10, Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sore destruction. So this current kingdom, America, Babylon the Great, spiritual Egypt, spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah, this isn't our rest, but majority of our people, they're under that same vibration that they were in during the time of the Exodus, during the time of the wilderness. They wanted to go back to Egypt because that's all they knew. They had the leeks, the melons, the onions. Jake don't want to leave Babylon the Great behind. That's why the Lord said, I'm going to leave you there and melt you, because they don't want to depart from this Babylonian experience, from America, Babylon the Great, Mystery Babylon, because this place lets you just do, whatever you want, whenever you want. Everything's at a convenience. But what has it done to our people? It has led them to a destroyed state of mind. Even us, that were once in the world, but we woke up to the true knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of Yahweh Bashim El Shai. Once we were given the true wisdom, we understand, how much of a death style we were living. Just completely void of judgment. Moving in the world just recklessly, eating fast food, smoking cigarettes, thinking that this world was gonna be the end all be all. But now that we have the true knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of Yahweh Bashim El Shai, now we know what true living is supposed to look like. And it's not supposed to look like America, Babylon the Great, with chemtrails being sprayed over you 24/7. Pollen just messing up your respiratory system. GMO foods, polluted water, polluted, women. And that's why majority of our people are just gonna have to get put to death, because they don't get it. They don't get that the earth needs a new rulership. That it don't matter how much money and bread you have, as long as we're under the curses, as long as Esau, Edom is over us, then we're not gonna have true rest. That's why Yahweh Shai is gonna come and deliver his. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 16 and verse 40. And it reads, O my people, hear my word, make you ready to thy battle, and in those evils be even as pilgrims upon the earth. Meaning, we're in those evil days. We're in a time of all hell's about to break loose. We're at the beginning stages of Jacob's trouble. Martial law is right around the corner. The mass implementation of the MOTB, aka the hour of temptation. But yet, our people, they're not moving, the 2/3 of our people, as being pilgrims upon the planet Earth. Because the nation of Israel, even though they went through captivity after captivity, they were always being pilgrims. They might have been in the captivity for hundreds of years, a couple of decades, but then eventually, Yahweh Bashim El Shai delivered them out of those captivities. And it's the same thing today. We weren't meant to be captives and slaves under Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, under the other heathen nations for eternity. No, we were ultimately meant to serve this captivity as a punishment for sinning against Yahweh Bashim El Shai, like it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28. But our people think that, we're on a vacation, let's make our hell comfortable, because our people don't even think that we're slaves and that we're in captivity, because they have a good job, they have a good career, they have a Mercedes, a 1-bedroom apartment, a 401k. So Jake thinks that, he's in heaven, that he don't need to be delivered. But when Esau, Edom, takes all the goods and dainties and conveniences away, that's when our people are going to want to get right, call upon the Lord, but it's going to be too late. You weren't storing up those treasures up in heaven when the grace period was open. They were storing up those treasures up in the stock market, and trying to get the hoes, trying to get all the bust down diamond chains. This is verse 41. It says, He that selleth, let him be as he that fleeth away, and he that buyeth as one that will lose. Yeah, and Our people are trying to establish all these businesses, these PPP loans, and I'm going to do this so I could build a bag, so I could send my kids to college. You know, you still got Jake out here trying to send their kids to college, you know, for no reason, don't even have a plan, just because they think that, oh, I'm going to send him to college, he's going to be successful getting his art degree. Completely through his hell out here. Not paying attention to the signs that are going around the world. They don't even know that the Strait of Hormuz is being closed. Here, gas prices are going up, but yet Jake don't even know why. They think that, oh, it's just going up just because. Verse 42, he that occupied merchandise as he that had no profit by it, and he that builded as he that should not dwell therein. So these 2/3 Israelite Jakes building and building, getting a bag, and you could already start to see at the higher level with the celebrities. You know, now the celebrities are doing bad. You know, going bankrupt. You know, they're not selling tickets. They're not selling out venues because people don't got it like that. But yet, Jake is still out here trying to make it. You know, trying to make it in society, trying to be like Esau, trying to get the American dream. And ultimately, we weren't meant to win on this side. But Jake is about to have to learn the hard way when the enemy comes down with that great wrath, like it says in Revelation chapter 12. It says, verse 43, he that soweth as if he should not reap, so also he that planteth the vineyard as he should not gather the grapes. So all these 401ks, pensions, stock market portfolios, gold and silver, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. Oh, I invested early, so I'm going to reap the benefits 50 years from now, 100 years from now. My children are going to have dividends from the stock market for the next 500 years. That's the mindset that Jake is in. They're in the same mindset as Esau, Edom, that their houses shall continue on forever. So that's why they're still building, still think that this society is going to continue on forever. But here, jobs are laying off in the thousands. People losing their jobs. One day, they go to work, they come back the next day and it just says business closed. No explanation, no severance package. Just find another job. But guess what? There is no jobs out here. Not jobs that are actually going to pay you well so you can be able to support yourself. Verse 44, they that marry as they that should not get no children, and they that marry not as a widower. So people are still getting married and that pre-flood behavior, eating, drinking, giving into marriage, because they think that, we're going to get married and we're going to be married for the rest of our lives. We're going to have children, great-grandchildren. When here they just implemented a mandatory selective service that's due in December, letting you know that war is here. World War III is at its beginning stages, and it's only going to ramp up more and more. So all this talks about marrying and, I love my husband. Man, they're about to get sent over there to the Middle East to fight in a battle of Armageddon, to fight Yahweh Shai, to fight the angels. Verse 45, therefore they that labor in vain. So these people are laboring in vain in a sense that they think that, if I work hard, then I'm going to get the American dream. I'm going to be equal like Esau, Edom. If you work hard like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, you can make it just like them. When those people were set up, so they could, so the public can think that, those billionaires made it through hard work, then I can make it too. When it's all a facade. Verse 46, for strangers shall reap their fruits and spoil their goods, overthrow their houses, and take their children captives. For in captivity and famine shall they get children. And you already see that happening with the northern kingdom. The ice rays. They going into Jake's houses and taking them captives, because we're at the beginning stages of Jacob's trouble, and this is going to only ramp up more and more. Jake that's living in the suburbs that thinks that, I'm good now. I'm in the suburbs. I don't live in the hood. Esau Edom is never going to touch me over here. That's where Esau Edom is going to touch first. Like it says in a couple verses up or a couple verses down, those that fear the Lord, Going into the Israelites, Esau, Edom's main target is you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, because Jake is in a way of the New World Order, starting with the remnant and the elect. That's why they're just going to try to put all Israel to death, but they're not going to be able to. Verse 47, and they that occupy their merchandise with robbery, the more they deck their cities, their houses, their possessions, and their persons. Verse 48, the more will I be angry with them, said for their sins, said the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. So Jake is still trying to build, trying to get more and more in that covetous spirit, keeping up with the Joneses, putting decking out their cars with the rims, with the tents. Oh, this house is not big enough, I'm gonna go get me a bigger house. That's the spirit that these 2/3 Israelites are in. And Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai is mad because here you got the prophets of the Lord warning you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans that this world's about to pass away, that this economy is about to collapse. But what is Jake doing? Talking shit, telling Jake, oh, go get a job, go get a bag, go get some money. Y'all broke. When everybody's, everybody's going broke. But once Esau Edom flips that switch, when he crashes the economy, he crashes